Chapter 10: Finding Federal Grant Opportunities That Fit Your Needs. In this chapter, recognizing red flags in NOFAs, writing to meet the peer reviewers' expectations, convincing other agencies to take a stakeholder seat in your grant application. Most grant writers start their grant writing endeavors by writing proposals for foundation and corporate grants. This is definitely the easier route for most grant writers, new or veteran. However, sooner or later you'll need to start exploring bigger pots of money. These bigger pots are typically found in grant funding opportunities at the federal level, which means you need to get comfortable reading federal grant application guidelines. This includes reading every word in a Notice of Funding Availability, NOFA, searching for and highlighting the technical requirements for your grant application, and asking the right crew of potential partners to support your grant application's submission. All federal funding agencies publish guidelines that spell out the type of grant or cooperative agreement application that they expect grant applicants to submit, called the NOFA language. The guidelines and the review points assigned to each section of the narrative guide you in what to write. Your content will be scored by peer reviewers. The higher your score, the higher your chances of winning. You must read and reread every sentence of a NOFA before you start researching the topic and writing your federal grant application. Then highlight the mandatory requirements throughout the document so that you can easily refer back to them and make sure you've covered them all. In this chapter, I cover everything you need to know to decide whether your organization should apply for a federal grant funding opportunity. Once you scrutinize the NOFA details and determine your organization's capability to manage a grant-funded program, dissecting the Notice of Funding Availability, over and over again. Suppose you receive an email alert about a grant or cooperative agreement opportunity from a federal grant funding agency, and you think that you have a chance to win the grant. But you don't know where to start or whether the grant's really worth going for. In this section, I walk you through the essentials of determining whether this competition is right for your organization. I also give you a quick lesson in what I call Grantlish, the art of talking about grants, so you have a better understanding of the review criteria language and terms. Winning a coveted government grant award means you must understand the importance of reading and following directions with no deviation from the funding agency's guidelines. When I download and open a NOFA from GrantSlove, I read the entire notice a minimum of 4 times. The first time, look for the list of eligible applicants who can apply for the funding. On the second pass, skim the basics, such as the name of the funding agency, the deadlines, the number of grants to be awarded, and the range of the grant awards. The third time, zero in on the application's formatting requirements, such as page limits, margins, and font types and sizes. On the fourth and final pass, seek out the peer review criteria. The peer review criteria is the point-based rating system a government agency uses to decide, section by section, whether your grant or cooperative agreement application cuts the mustard and is recommended for funding. Figuring out who can apply. Before you look at the details of the funding announcement to see what's being offered, you must determine whether your organization is eligible for the competition and, if so, whether it's ready to start competing. The following sections help you do both of these things. Verifying your eligibility. Are you eligible for that NOFA you just came across? Before you conclude that the grant or cooperative agreement matches your needs, check out the eligibility paragraph in the funding synopsis or full announcement to make sure your organization is eligible to apply for these federal funds. Otherwise, you'll waste a lot of time working on an application that will no doubt be rejected. Here's a sampling of what you see when you look under the eligible applicant section of the synopsis or full announcement: non-profits having a 501(c)(3) status with the IRS, other than institutions of higher education. Non-profits that don't have a 501(c)(3) status with the IRS, other than institutions of higher education. For-profit organizations other than smaller businesses. Smaller businesses. Native American tribal governments, federally recognized. Native American tribal organizations, other than federally recognized tribal governments. Public housing authorities, Native American housing authorities. Independent school districts. Private institutions of higher education. Public and state-controlled institutions of higher education. State governments. County governments. Special district governments. City or township governments. If your organization's structure is listed under the eligible applicant section, great. If not, don't give up, Look for a potential partnering organization that's eligible to apply and then contact that organization as soon as possible to see whether it's interested in being the grant applicant and fiscal agent. What's your role in this situation? You're considered a subcontracted and funded partner agency. Remember, you don't have to be the grant applicant to secure a portion of the grant funds. Partnering with another organization as a subcontractor can be an excellent strategy for building financial sustainability. If your organization has not won previous federal grant awards and has no experience in managing large amounts of electronic reporting processes, then applying for Uncle Sam's money, at this time, may not be the best move on your part. Why? It takes all staff on board and willing to assist with any new programs. In addition, you may have to hire new staff on day one of the proposed program start date. However, the feds won't be transferring any money from the big bank account in Washington, D.C. to your local bank account up front. If your organization's finances are limited, you need money in the bank to support early on program startup expenses until your reimbursement or other type of payment arrangement comes in. Making sure you're ready to take on a massive research and writing project. After you're sure of your eligibility, ask yourself whether your organization is ready to start competing for a specific grant award opportunity. You also need to decide whether you are able to fulfill the grant program's purpose after the organization is funded. When you click the full grant funding announcement link, found in the synopsis, look for the purpose of funding or description of funding statement, usually a paragraph in length, which tells you exactly what the funding agency plans to fund. Here are some examples of funding statement purposes. National Endowment for the Humanities. This notice solicits applications for the National Digital Newspaper Program, NDNP. NDNP is a partnership between NEA and the Library of Congress, LC, to create a national digital resource of historically significant newspapers published between 1690 and 1963, from all 56 states and U.S. jurisdictions. This searchable database will be permanently maintained by LC and will be freely accessible online. See Chronicling America, Historic American Newspapers. An accompanying National Newspaper Directory of bibliographic and holdings information on the website directs users to newspaper titles available in all types of formats. During the course of its partnership with NEA, LC will also digitize and contribute a significant number of newspaper pages drawn from its own collections to the NDNP database. Environmental Protection Agency. Applications will be evaluated based on the extent to which the applicant demonstrates a vision for the cleanup, reuse, and redevelopment of brownfield sites and a strategy for leveraging resources to help accomplish the vision, the environmental, social, health, and economic needs and benefits of the target area, strong community engagement, reasonable costs and eligible tasks and appropriate use of grant funding, the capacity for managing and successfully implementing the cooperative agreement, and other factors. Department of Education. The Project SAFE grant program is intended to improve student safety and well-being by providing resources to local educational agencies, LEAs, that adopt and implement strategies to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, consistent with guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, and that to financially penalized for doing so by their state educational agency, C, or other state entity. Department of Agriculture. The USDA SBIR program focuses on transforming scientific discovery into products and services with commercial potential and/or societal benefit. Unlike fundamental research, the USDA SBIR program supports small businesses in the creation of innovative, disruptive technologies and enables the application of research advancements from conception into the market. Different from most other investors, the USDA SBIR program funds early or seed stage research and development that has commercial potential. The program provides equity-free funding and entrepreneurial support at the earliest stages of company and technology development. If, after reading through your selected federal funding opportunities purpose of funding statement, you find that one or more of its purposes fits your organization's long-range plan for program development or expansion, you have a green flag. Head to the next section for more on identifying go and no-go points. If your organization has no experience in any of the mentioned programming areas and you just want to apply for easy money, be aware that your capacity to fulfill the purpose on receipt of funding may be limited. This situation definitely signals a red flag. Using a checklist to determine whether you should apply for a grant. GrantsGov is the go-to resource for finding the most current federal grant funding opportunities. Refer to Chapter 5 for more information on GrantsGov. To start receiving free email alerts, go to the GrantsGov homepage and click the Connect tab, top right. Then select Manage Subscriptions. Scroll down to Custom Email Notifications and enter your email. If you think you have a lot of email now, just wait until you start receiving the GrantsGov Daily Here's the Money lists. It's detailed and filled with clickable web addresses where you can go to read full funding announcements, not just a few lines of detail. This site is the beginning of your journey to read about each grant program's application guidelines and the peer review criteria that determine whether you win or lose. When you receive the email from GrantsGov, you see a listing of potential grant funding announcements. Here's an example of an entry: Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, for the Department's Fiscal Year 2021 Comprehensive Housing Counseling Grant Program. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The email listing also includes a link to the web address where you can click through to read the synopsis, summary, of the NOFO and click through again to read the full application document. In the synopsis, you can quickly cruise through the summary of the announcement to look for information that can best be called red stop flags and green go flags. A red flag means warning, do not apply. Take these steps when you're cruising through the summary. Look for the number of grants to be awarded. The number of awards is one of the first flags. You have virtually no chance at winning a highly competitive grant award when the number of grants awarded is in the single digits, meaning only 1 to 9 awards will be made. How can you stand a chance of winning one of these limited awards when you're competing with grant applicants from 50 states, several U.S. territories, and possibly any one of nearly 600 federally recognized tribal organizations? What number of awards can you consider to be a green get ready to apply flag? If the funder is awarding at least 40 grants for general competitions, open to a very large list of potential grant applicants, and at least 10 grants for a limited competition, open to a small number of industry-specific grant applicants, such as museums or libraries, then you're good to go. Here's an example of how this information will look in a federal agency's NOFA, expected number of awards. 25, to determine the grant application deadline. For example, you may see application deadline information that looks like this: original closing date for applications, the 7th of February, 2022. Current closing date for applications, the 7th of February, 2022. If the original closing date and current closing date are different, it's because some aspects of this NOFA have likely been changed based on funding agency updates. This would be a red flag because it means you would need to read the updated set of grant application guidelines to see the specific changes. Any change may affect your grant application narrative, due date, required attachments, or state agency sign-offs. Sometimes a federal funding agency requires you to submit your grant application package to a state agency for review and sign-off before it'll accept your application. Most competitive NOFAs give the grant writer at least 30 days, often more, from the date of publication on GrantsGov. If this announcement were published on the 1st of February and marked as due the 7th of February, that's a sign the feds already know whom they want to award this grant to, which is why the turnaround time for the grant application due date is so short. The following NOFA, for example, is a luxury timeline for any grant writer because there are more than 30 days between the NOFA's first publication and the closing, due, date. If your organization is eligible and you're planning to apply for these grant monies, such a timeline is a definite green flag. Posted date, the 14th of January, 2021. Creation date, the 8th of December, 2021. Original closing date for applications, the 7th of February, 2022. Current closing date for applications, the 7th of February, 2022. Many times, funding agency staff find errors in the first publication of the NOFA, or interested grant applicants start emailing and calling the funding agency's program officer with questions because there is a bit of confusion or lack of clarity in the first NOFA release. When this happens, the funding agency publishes modifications or addendums. This is labeled as an update in the synopsis, and usually all the changes within the guidelines document are highlighted to reduce confusion. If you miss modifications made midway through the grant writing process, your application will not score high peer review points because it won't match the most recent updates. Check Grants.gov daily for these unexpected changes and be ready to redirect your writing or modify your project budget well before the grant application deadline. You can also sign up to be alerted for modification updates. If you're going to research and write a winning government grant application, you need time on your side. Any deadline that's 30 or more days from the date of the grant funding opportunity announcement is definitely appealing. Less than 30 days is not so appealing. If you're making your first attempt at applying for a government grant, look for a closing date that allows you at least 30 days for researching and writing. Having less than 3 weeks to write your first federal grant may be overwhelming unless you can devote 100% of your work time to the grant. Normal writing time for a federal grant is 40 to 100 hours, and research can add another 20 to 40 hours. So give yourself ample time. Even if you're a veteran grant writer. 3. Find out the total estimated funding available for grant awards. Say the estimated total program funding noted in a funding announcement is $9,750,000 million. The NOFA further states the award ceiling, maximum grant award for one grant applicant, and award floor, minimum grant award for one grant applicant. Here's a green flag example. Estimated total program funding, $9,750,000 million. Award ceiling, $400,000. Award floor, $0, $0. Ready to put the preceding steps into practice? Take a look at Figure 10-1, which shows a Grants.gov NOFA. If you follow Step 1, you notice that there will be 25 grant awards. So far, this NOFA is a go. When you have no obvious red flags and several green flags, meaning you have at least 30 days to research and write your federal grant application and at least 10 grants will be awarded, you can start eyeballing the full application document. Scanning for standard terms. All federal grant and cooperative agreement announcements use two types of terms, general and program-specific. General terms are words or phrases that appear in all funding announcements. Program-specific terms are words or phrases used in connection with a particular program. Knowing both types of terms and using them correctly throughout your grant application increases your review criteria points and therefore the likelihood that your application will be recommended for funding. Getting the gist of general terms. Knowing general terms can help you understand what any funding agency is talking about in the grant or cooperative agreement announcement. If you've only been schooled in oranges, and the funding agency writes its entire announcement in apples, you'll be lost if you don't understand the key terms. Use comma. Source, https://www.grants.gov/web/view-opportunity.html op id = 334991. Figure 10-1, a sample of a NOFA. Some key general terms you may encounter in grant announcements include the following: budget period, the interval of time by which a grant program defines its funding cycle. The cycle can range from 1 year to multiple years. For example, a large percentage of federal grants start on the first day of the federal fiscal year, the 1st of October. The budget period for grants awarded on the 1st of October ends on the 30th of September of the following year. Non-profit organization, typically defined according to what the tax code classifies as a charitable or 501(c)(3) organization. Project period, the total time a project is approved for support, including any extensions. This time period can range from 12 months to 60 months, or longer. Third party, any individual, organization, or business entity, different from your partners, that isn't the direct recipient of grant funds but will subcontract with the grantee to act as its fiscal agent and carry out specified activities in the plan of operation. Third-party arrangement, an arrangement in which the fiscal agent is the third party in the grant or cooperative agreement application. See the nearby sidebar titled Understanding How Third-Party Arrangements Work. Seeking out program-specific terms. Every government program, both federal and state, has its own terms and definitions. These program-specific terms appear in the full grant application guidelines. See Chapter 8 for terminology such as deliverables, principal investigator, and other program-specific terms. Each government agency provides its own definitions of the terms in the grant funding opportunity announcement. See the earlier section Figuring Out Who Can Apply. Use the same terms as those published in the announcement when you write your grant application. By using each agency's terms and its definitions, you meet the basic requirement of the review criteria, showing that you understand the Fed's language. Understanding how third-party arrangements work. Check out this example of a third-party arrangement. Say you find a competition that fits your organization, which is a zoological society located in an urban area. However, under the eligibility section of this grant opportunity, only zoological society consortiums that jointly cover more than 3 states can apply for these funds. Using your regional and national zoological society networking lists, you contact several similar organizations in your region to ask whether they're aware of the available funding and whether they want to form a consortium with your society. Depending on which society has the strongest credentials, years in operation, size of property, annual visitor count, number of exotic animals, and so on, your society or another society with more impressive credentials may take the lead as the grant applicant. When one of your collaborative partners indicates that they will commit to supporting your proposed projects, it's critical that you create a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, or Memorandum of Agreement, MOA, to capture their proposed contributions. MOUs and MOAs are formal written documents describing a cooperative relationship between 2 or more parties wishing to work together on a project. What is the difference between an MOU and MOA? An MOU is a legal document, and an MOA is a cooperative agreement. Federal grant makers require MOUs, while foundations request MOAs. When you have a working MOU or MOA, you're ready to start negotiating your piece of the financial pie, a place in the contractual section of the budget summary and detail. In other words, your society is on its way to becoming a third-party contractor scrutinizing the review criteria. When you click the link to access the full announcement in a grant funding opportunity announcement, the synopsis, you see the full-blown grant application guidelines document, usually as a PDF file. Scroll down in the document to look for the review criteria section. This section is also often called the evaluation criteria section. Understanding the review criteria can help you determine whether the grant funding opportunity is one you should invest time and effort in pursuing. After all, if you can't fully meet key criteria, you have no reason to go after the grant or cooperative agreement. Likewise, if you can meet all the criteria, following the guidelines closely gives you a much better chance of receiving the points needed for recommendation. The review criteria section of the document cuts to the chase by showing you how each section of the grant application narrative is rated. This section tells you, to the letter, exactly what the peer reviewers expect to read in a winning grant application. It also tells you the total number of possible points a winning narrative section can earn during the peer review process. For more details about peer reviews and the points they award, see Chapter 11. Finding the right collaborators. The right partners can be essential in a winning government grant application. Some funding guidelines give favorable consideration, and thus more review criteria points, to applicants who can get cash or in-kind contributions from partner organizations. Moreover, partnering with another organization may open the door to government funding for which your organization isn't directly eligible to apply. Identifying the right leveraging and implementation partners. The old method of grant seeking was to identify a ton of community partners, any agency with letterhead, who would agree to write a generic, and somewhat weak, letter of support. The new and improved way to create partnerships is with collaborative partners who agree to provide letters of commitment to support your grant application. Collaborative partners are government, health, education, faith-based, business and industry, social, and human services agencies at the local, regional, and state levels that commit in writing, via letters of commitment, to use their resources to help your organization better deliver the services funded by a grant. These organizations are signing on for the long haul to help your organization implement the grant-funded activities. Collaborative partners also help draft and then sign detailed Memoranda of Understanding, MOU, or Memoranda of Agreement, MOA, working agreements that spell out the scope of services that both parties, you and the partner agency, will perform. Federal funding agencies prefer that partnerships are documented in letters of commitment, MOUs or MOAs, rather than their weaker cousin, which are letters of support. As you can imagine, involving your organization in a partnership has pros and cons. On the pros side, partnerships have the potential to do all of the following: create new opportunities, initiate trust at the local level, expand your organization's marketing target population area, Expand your public image via links to your organization or services on the partner's website and mentions in the partner's press releases related to the grant-funded program. Help maximize your financial assets to a grant maker by adding external leveraging and/or matching resources. Increase your competitive advantage in the grant-seeking arena. Provide access to broader financial and human resources. The cons of partnerships are mostly related to what the partners expect. They expect all of the following: a piece of the grant pie, an equal voice and vote in group decisions, reciprocal benefits from your organization, letters of commitment, expeditious signing of future MOUs for upcoming grant submissions, grant alert sharing, and more. When looking for a collaborative partner, look for an agency that already serves all or part of your target population. For example, a faith-based group may not be a good partner if you're trying to secure funding for a sex education program for adolescents. A better match may be an agency that focuses on sexual and reproductive health, such as Planned Parenthood. Also, make sure to select partners that have a history and background in your specific grant application area for each grant or cooperative agreement you plan to pursue. As a successful grant writer having brought in more than $750 million in awards, I'm often asked how many partners do we need. I have a solid rule that I apply to that question. I believe the magic number is 10 or more partners. Because the partners you select must fit the project topic funding area, your list of 10 will change with each grant application. Partners will tire of writing letters of commitment multiple times per year, so try to switch out partners from time to time to invite some new players to your grant-seeking game. Types of partners include, but are not limited to, the following: referral partners, agencies that refer clients to your organization and agencies that your organization refers its clients to as well. Public sector partners, state, county, city, and other government agencies that have representatives assigned to your governing body or any advisory boards or committees. Business partners, any type of business that has a vested interest in your clientele, such as banks, potential client employers, retail establishments, and for-profit employment agencies. Professional sector partners, for example, law firms, accounting firms, and professional associations that can provide adult mentors. It's okay to have multiple partners from any one of the categories. Of course, the number of partners for each grant application depends on the project and the organizations needed to provide complementary services or funding. Not having any partners can be detrimental to your grant application during the peer review process. I'm a federal peer reviewer, and when I come across a grant or cooperative agreement application with fewer than 10 partners listed, or even worse, no partners listed, I deduct at least 5 review points from the program design section. A loss of 5 or more points in any section can result in your application not making the cut for funding. The typical make or break score is 95 points, that is, if you fail to score a minimum of 95 out of 100 possible points on your funding request, you won't be recommended for federal funding support. Heads up, as there are grant applications that score from 95 to 97 points but do not make the final cut for a grant award. Why? Politics and heavily supported competitors. Getting in-kind and cash commitments from partners. Before you meet with a prospective partner, prepare a fact sheet on the grant program's purpose and goals. Email a copy to each agency you plan to invite onto your team. This way, before you meet face-to-face, the other agency can start thinking of ways to collaborate with your organization. At your first meeting, ask for at least one of the following contributions: cash match monies, a commitment of actual cash in the form of a contribution toward your proposed program's expenses. In-kind contributions, donated personnel, office space, training space, transportation assistance, supplies, materials, printing services for classroom training use, and other needed items. If you receive a commitment for cash or in-kind contributions before you even write your grant application, you've already chalked up points with reviewers. In the eyes of those who hand out the grant money, having one or more partners gives you a huge advantage over any grant-seeking organization without partners, because partners mean that community resources will be maximized to benefit the target population. After you have a committed partner, you're ready for the official MOU or MOA. Some funding agencies request that you attach the MOU or MOA as an appendix to the funding requests. Other funding agencies simply require that the documents be on file with your organization and that they be accessible by the funding agency if monies are awarded. Remember to reference the MAU partnership in your grant application and narrative when it isn't a required document in the funder's guidelines. And MAU or MOA should be treated like a legal document and should not be developed by a grant writer. Assign this task to your organization's executive director or legal staff. Don't take it on yourself.